So I think I figured out how the kilt works. And I've got my concept art, my design element, and now I just have to make it happen. So this is the original fabric that I was going to base everything off of. It's kind of a brown, warm color, and it's got some greens and reds and oranges and kind of fall colors in there. And this is what I got for the kilt. Traditionally, you'd use a wool and obviously a tartan, but I'm not doing that. For a variety of reasons. Part of it is cost, and also I really don't like plaid. I also have several friends with wool allergies, so wearing wool is always kind of a risk. So this cotton twill worked just as well. And this camera really isn't picking up the kind of pretty nature of this warm brown, but it really matches really well, so I'm really excited. Now what I'm hoping to do is to be able to make some appliques on this tool. So kind of similar to what you saw in the pillow videos that I just posted, I'm going to make some digital art and then embroider it on here, and then I'll be able to cut it off of here and sew it onto the finished product. Normally I'd sew it directly onto the fabric, but between the pattern and me not having a lot of room to have error, having a separate piece that I can put on the end is going to be a lot more better. So basically right now what I'm doing is drawing out the leaves that I'm hopefully going to be making as applique. So this is what a finished one looks like. So this is the first one that I've done, and I have 8 different ones that I have to draw. So this is going to take a while, but it'll be really cool when it's done. I finished drawing all 8 of the designs that I'm going to use on the kilt. First person to tell me it looks like salad gets blocked. But this is a big part, and yeah. So yeah, what's next is digitizing, which is its own very time-consuming process. But I'm really liking how they turned out. I think it's going to turn out really cool when it's all done. So many notes. So this is the same fabric I'll be using for the new doublet, and I made this one probably like 6 years ago, something like that. Actually, I like it because it's got pockets in it. And this is really similar to what the new one's going to look like, with a few exceptions, like this will be one solid piece instead of pleated like this, and a much smaller corseted back. But this does not come close to fitting me anymore, like, at all. Which is why I'm going to make it again, because it's one of my favorites. But this is actually really super helpful because I was able to kind of use it for what measurements I'm going to need for when I was making those designs. Because it can be really hard to tell even just through patterns and things like what sizing will be, but if you've got a finished garment already, you can kind of fit it to it as it goes. So yeah, that's roughly what it'll look like, but you know, covered in oak leaves. So I got a chance to kind of test out the digitizing process on this today, and unfortunately it's not gonna work. These really pretty veins that I put in the leaves are just a little too thin to work in the program that I'm using. I'm also having a lot of issues with the color kind of blending in, like it's thinking that this color and this color are the same. And I have been able to get around it in the past, but for whatever reason I can't get it to work this time. But I can separate this individual thing and just do the leaves, and that might also help a little bit with the veins, I'm not sure. But in the name of time, I'm going to try and just thicken up the veins a little bit and see if that might also work. So, you know, kind of 1 step forward, 2 steps back, but I will make this work. Okay, so you can see I've kind of gone in and thickened up the lines a bit. They don't look as bad as I thought they would, but they don't look quite how I would want them to look. That thin line really gave it that kind of cool look. But in an effort to try and keep that cooler, thinner look, I've separated all of the acorns with the leaves, and this will allow me to play around and hopefully quickly figure out how to make this into exactly what I want it to be in the digitizing process. I am so sick of drawing leaves. Ah! So thickening the lines definitely worked. You can see, for some reason, I don't know why, but I'm getting lots of these little artifacts, which, you know, I can just delete these, but delete, and, you know, it looks much better. I don't know why those show up. And they're usually not nearly this bad, but they're really bad on this one, which means that each pad is going to take longer to make. But it actually looks really nice, so I'm excited now. Like, what's a little annoying is that it's getting rid of the darker color green, and I can't seem to do anything to get it back. But that also means that I have to use less colors of thread, which ends up being better for me because less cost in the end. Okay, I'm still very much learning this program, but I'm dumb because I can literally just group select and delete. And look at how much better that looks. That literally just saved me hours of time. What's also really cool is that I can change the texture of the thread. But that means that I can get a really nice kind of realistic acorn texture. And I can even view it in 3D, look at that, woo! Ah, that looks so cool! Alright, so I have reversed the pattern and put 2 on a hoop so I can stitch both of them at the same time. And this is gonna be kind of the big test, so cross your fingers. Alright, so I've 2 layers of tulle and then 1 layer of a water-soluble stabilizer. So let's get stitching. So far it's looking pretty good. Oh, these turned out amazing. Look at that. And look, even the back looks nice. I'm so excited. So now I'm going to try and wet it down and get rid of the stabilizer. And that'll be the ultimate test. Guess what? They turned out perfect. There's no loose stitches, which is what I was worried about. Still holding together great on the back. This was a complete success. I'm so excited. I realized I didn't actually make an update on when I sewed the kilt. Basically, all I've done is just pleated everything. This is about 4.5 yards of fabric. I just did a rolled hem on the bottom, and then I just pleated it. Basically, I got the whole length of the fabric and then just basically folded it over 2 inches, and then pinned, and then fold over another 2 inches and pin, and then, you know, pinned both the top and 4 inches down and the bottom until I got something like that, and then stitched it down. And it stitched the top so it won't come loose, and base stitched it 4 inches down so it won't shift. And then I also base stitched the bottom because then it's not going to be flopping all over when I'm trying to work with it. And that's what you've missed. So now what I'm going to do is just do another rolled hem on this piece, which is the lining that's going to be on the butt, basically. Just to make it more comfortable so the pleating isn't on your butt. And this is the waist lining, which I'm doubling up with canvas, just so it'll be a little bit sturdier. I'm just going to iron that because it's a little wrinkly from travel. Okay, so I've got my 2 lining pieces pinned, and now to sew. Alright, the linings are sewn. Now I'm going to make belt loops, which is just a 2-inch strip of fabric. Now I've folded it in half and ironed it. And now I've opened it back up and folded into the center line. And then ironed. This is where thermal thimbles really come in handy. Be careful not to burn yourself. And then fold down once more. And if you iron well, you won't have to use pins. And then you just stitch it on both sides. And then you just cut to whatever length you have, and you have a nice sturdy belt loop. In this case, I'm doing 4.5 inches so I can put a 3-inch belt in easily. So now I'm sewing the rear lining onto the belt lining. So now I need to fold over the edge a 1/2 inch. Since I sewed the lining at a 1/2 inch, it's really easy because I just gotta flip it over and press. But on the part that I didn't sew, I have to use a seam gauge to make sure it's exactly 1/2 inch. Close enough. And then a good iron to make sure it's nice and flat. This will make the next part way easier. Placement of the belt loops, stitch them down, and then pin and stitch the lining onto the kilt. Alright, and that seam is sewn, and you can tell it's already starting to look a lot more like a kilt. Alright, now what I've done is flipped over the lining, and then made sure that it flipped over itself, so I've created this kind of very nice heavy edge here that's going to add a lot of stability. And now what I'm doing is called stitching in the ditch, which is stitching along that kind of crease right there so it hides the seam. Alright, and then the inside I just pin down and I'm going to stitch along the edge. Lining is all sewn in, and now I just have this. Now in a real professional wool kilt, I would be invisibly stitching these down so it would create a nice pleat, but you couldn't get your finger into it. But that's a lot of effort I don't feel like putting into this right now, so I'm going to stitch right down the middle and it'll work just the same. Alright, so I stitched it down and I also stitched down the belt loops, just by tacking down the end with a reinforced stitch. So now a belt can get in there really easily. The only seam left is the edge, which I've already started by folding this over already. It's just going to be a 1-inch rolled hem. Pretty simple. And now the fun part. And there's the attached applique. It's very firmly secured, and since it's an applique, the back, if this ever flips up, won't look really ugly. Now all that's left to do is the straps and buckles. So now I'm going to design the straps. So I've drawn a line the thickness of the lining of my kilt, which is where the support will be. I have to design within this parameter. Alright, drafted the pattern for the 2 buckles. This one's got a bit more decoration, but since this side will get covered up, I'm just going to do some stamping on it. Alright, I was going to originally make this out of veggie tan leather and stamp it, but I found this piece of scrap leather that's nice, thick kind of belting material. I can get all the straps out of it, so I'm going to use this instead. I've secured it down with a temporary spray adhesive, and now I cut. And a little bit of paint, and they're decorated. So I've decided to make the spar-on belt out of leather as well. Now this is veggie tan leather, so I can tool this. As you can see, I've already sliced and cut up the holes for this side. Because as I mentioned before, the buckle was too big for this, so now it fits. And I'm going to get really creative on this side. Now it's a little short, so I added a little bit extra length by adding this piece that I'm going to rivet down. Alright, I've tooled the belt and dyed it. Just put the top coat on and then maybe a little bit of paint, and then I'll be done with that. Alright, buckles and straps are added. So I have all of the appliques now embroidered onto the tool. They turned out absolutely gorgeous. I couldn't be happier. And you can see I've got matching sets here, like this is the front, and then of course the original ones that I had for the front pockets, the back, kilt front, back. And I also have already embroidered the hat. And I noticed this one's on fabric. This is actually a cutout piece. It's small enough that I was able to center it without an issue. But these ones are on a much harder to center fabric, so that's why I've decided to make them applique. I also do it because if something did go wrong, which it did, right here if you look really closely, I had a lot of issues with that one and had to redo that part about 7 times. I also accidentally started stitching brown on over the green on this part and had to undo it all by hand. It took over an hour. But it's much easier to fix on something like this that I can end up throwing away if it's not perfect than it would be to try and fix this material, which I have a very limited resource of, which by the way doesn't look great. It's much easier to be able to place this on cut out pieces than it is to embroider on the fabric and try and cut around it, or to embroider on a cut piece. So I do have the crown of the hat finished. I still need to do the band, and I need to still do the sprawn, and I still need to do another hat band for if I ever wear this with a top hat. So a few more things I'm hoping to keep on sewing. The appliques are kind of my focus right now, and you can see I've still got this tool that's kind of rough cut around the design, and I need to very carefully cut all that tool off. I also went to the leather supply store and picked up buckles and belting so that I can put straps on the side. I was super happy because they had exactly the number of buckles that I needed, and they even had this economy strip belting, but me not paying any attention, I got the wrong size. So I can either try and cut this down or try and get another piece. But more accurately, I'm probably just going to take a larger piece of hide like this and actually design my own strap that's a double strap with a decorative oak leaf on it. More work, but it's also going to make it a lot more cool looking. And I don't have to spend any more money. So yeah, let's get cutting. Alright, trimmed in a light iron with a pressing cloth, and I have a finished applique. Yeah, look at those. Nice. So as I mentioned in the previous videos, this is the doublet that I'm going to be remaking because it doesn't fit, which means that I need to remake the pattern. This is my original doublet pattern from like 8 years ago, so the pattern is pretty beat up and paper is getting a little brittle. So I'm going to iron it and kind of see what I'm working with here. So on altering patterns, all 11 of these are all made off of that one base pattern from that original doublet. The second iteration of this has this piece that I can add a corset back all the way up to the neck. So unlike a traditional vest piece where it's just a front and a back, there's the front and then 2 back pieces. And then I also made this elongated pattern that goes all the way down to my knees, which is what a lot of these are. But what I like best about this pattern is the collar on it. It has a nice swoop upwards, and it's just good for pretty much anything that I've used. So it's kind of become my signature. However, what I want different is this bottom part here. And while I plan on putting in this lacing so it's expandable, I also need to make the pattern a little bit wider. Alright, so I've pinned the original pattern onto a new clean piece of newspaper. And then I'm just going to trace around it. Now I'm just going to add 2 inches to the side, because I'm that fat. I also add a little section here to the shoulder just to kind of even out everything. So one of the benefits of making a applique before you make the pattern is that you can base the pattern off of the applique. So because I can lay this down on the paper, I can get the proper spacing of exactly what I want. So I'm also going to add a little pocket in here so that I can have pockets. Because anyone that's ever gone to a festival knows that you need to carry stuff around, and pockets are invaluable. But that also means I need to make this a little bit lower enough so I can actually put a flap over this and not cover up my hard work. Another reason why I made the appliques not on the original fabric is because this pattern is covered in darts. Darts are these kind of little diamond shapes you cut in that kind of create that beautiful curve that's on the collar. There's also one down here at the waist. I could try to figure out how to put a dart into this, but it's going to be much easier to sew the dart and place this on top of it and kind of work with the curve. So I've got my pattern all pinned down to the fabric, and now I cut. So now that I have the pieces cut out, I'm going to trace along the dart line using transfer paper. It's a little faint, but you can see basically now I've transferred that pattern onto the fabric. The blue showed up a little better. Now that the main fabric is cut out, I cut the lining. And there we've got it. Kilt update. This is the lining and the main fabric of the doublet. What I'm sewing now are all the darts. There's 16 of them in total. Alright, darts have been sewn, and you can kind of see it does make a seam on the front, but it gives it a bit more of a shape. And now we add the applique. And there they're pinned. So now what I'm doing is basically zigzag stitching around the whole edge using the same color thread as what I used to embroider. And that stitches it down. Alright, all the patches have been sewn on, and all of the little side pieces have all been sewn together. And, you know, grommets grommeted. So now it's just putting everything together. Oh, and I've built in pockets into this one. Alright, so I've pinned the lining to the main fabric here, and I've left some gaps so I can put in the peplum second without having to worry about catching them in the seams. Okay, everything's been sewn and trimmed. Now I just gotta flip it inside out. All this work just for this moment. Looks pretty good. Alright, markings for grommet. So now that the doublet and kilt are finished, let's make some accessories. Pin, sew, serge, and now I've got a nice little hat and a hat band for a top hat. Now the sporran is going to be a little bit more challenging. I haven't made the pattern yet because I wasn't exactly sure how big this top piece would be, so I needed to make this, and now I'm going to base the pattern off of this. Alright, I got a basic design out. The big thing is how I'm going to keep this bag closed. I don't want to put a button because then it'll obscure the, design. I don't want to put a clasp because of the same reason. So I think I'm going to do is weigh it down with these pretty jewels that I have. And then I incorporate the other ones into the rest of the outfit. Alright, pattern is made. And now the fabric's cut. Now to sew this, I basically have to stitch along the very edge of this. Only I'm looking at this side. Very careful. Beautiful. Alright, the lining has been sewn in. Now for the big reveal. Now we stitch up the hole. No! I've sewn it shut, but there's a pin that somehow got stuck in there. So now I have to undo that seam and dig that pin out. Stupid pin. So in my last video I was trying to figure out how I can close this bag and keep it closed. I was going to put jewels on it to weigh down the front, but that's not super secure, and then I remembered I have access to one of these. It's a magnetic clasp. It's basically a stitch one down here, and a stitch one up there, and then they close. And as I was going to get thread to sell this, I perfectly used up my spool of thread. And that was the last seam in my entire project. God is watching. This is actually a really great option because I can sew it into the lining, and it won't show up on the front. And since it's magnetic, it'll be really easy to open and close because, you know, this will be on my groin, so fumbling with it in public is not a great idea. Yeah. Alright, so the back that I can put a belt in, and the front. And it's got expandability, so I can fill it up if I need to. But it also lays flat when I don't need it to be full. So as I mentioned a couple of videos ago, I made grommet hole marks. Now the process is really hard to film, so I'm not going to film it, but basically I use this punch to punch a hole. And you can see it kind of comes out there. And this is the actual grommet. There's the male part that has the part that goes into the fabric, and the female part that's basically a washer. They get set into this device, and then this goes in there, and then I hit it with a hammer, and then you get that. Now to repeat it 39 times, and then you've got a nice set of grommets. So I actually used to hate doing buttons so much that I used to put snaps in almost everything that I made just to avoid it. But then I got this nice new machine, and it's got this automatic buttonholer, and it makes life so much easier. I basically just have to line up the hole and like press the foot, and it does everything for me. Abracadabra! Well, I gotta push a button. Abracadabra! But yeah, it literally like finishes up the right size and everything. It's great. Yeah, it makes real quick work of buttonholes now. It does even actually have an option to sew buttons on, but not shank buttons. Come on, technology, advance! Sew it on. And now I tie the sides up like a corset. This is the last thing I need to do. This brown hat that goes with it was a recent purchase, but I made the hat band on my old hat, so it doesn't quite fit. So I need to add about 1.5 inches to this hat band. I drafted up my pattern, pin, sew, trim, sew, flip, press, unsew, resew, and now we fit. Looks pretty good. You wouldn't guess it was any other way any other time. And then of course you need a little decoration. Alright. Here is the final project. I'm sorry that the audio is a little off. I had to kind of edit this funny, but here it is. It's in all of its glory. You can see everything turned out really, really well. All the appliques just look fantastic. If you've never done this technique, I highly recommend you trying it because it really does make for a very fantastic final result. But overall in the project, I'm very happy with how this came out. Doublet looks great, fits great. The kilt turned out wonderful too, especially if considering this is my very first time ever even attempting one. You can see it's got that nice pleating in the back. Again, that applique. And everything just looks so great. Here are the pockets, the hidden pockets, one of my favorite features of this outfit. All that leather work. You can see there. This is the bag, of course, which is one of my favorite parts of this entire thing with that magnetic clasp. And overall, very, very happy. Oh, here I'm still digging in in my bag here. But just, yeah, I loved it.